Do any of you remember Andy Rooney? I suppose you do. He was on television for a long, long time. He joined the crew at 60 Minutes as a writer and then later got his own segment on the program in the late 1970s, a position he held for what, 30, 35 years, and became somewhat of an American institution pre-cable. He was a man who was selling books left and right with his observations, the same type of thing you could see during his segment on television. Rooney was once being interviewed, and he was, I guess, a guest on the Sunday morning program when Charles Kuralt still hosted it. Gosh, now I know time has flown by because Kuralt's been dead about 20 years, and Rooney's been dead for 4 or 5. But he was being asked about political conventions and media today. In the old days when I was a kid growing up, all of the major news networks did wall to wall coverage. And so all of your favorite shows, well, they were all repeats in the summer at the time anyway. So the conventions, we got 3 TV stations, so if we got home, you had the choice of NBC's coverage, CBS's coverage, or ABC's coverage. And all were fairly standard, all very much the same. And then cable came along, and now what's happened is because of CNN and then Fox and then MSNBC, which I sometimes refer to as MSDNC because of its political persuasion, they came along, and now, and on my package at home, even the BBC, I picked that up. They do some coverage of our conventions because these are considered big events worldwide. And yet, Rooney said, we're told that only, this was when the big networks, the old alphabet networks, were pulling back coverage saying, well, if people want to see it, they'll watch it over at Fox or CNN and the like. Rooney was being interviewed about it. And he said, when he was questioned about the lack of interest any longer at his own network in these conventions, Rooney said something to the effect of, and I thought this was a great line, well, we're told that only 15% of the American people watch political conventions, but we shouldn't be worried because they have 85% of all of the brains in this country. And there is something to be said about that. I was sitting down yesterday and I had just flipped on coverage on television of the Republican convention. They were going to have the vote, the nomination vote for Donald Trump. And I got a text message from a friend, and he made reference to something being said on television. Now, he was watching the same network. And I had been on the telephone with another friend who was glad to see Neil Cavuto was back on the air. Cavuto had open heart surgery and had to take some time off. And so these guys were all actually watching the convention coverage as well. And so I got thinking about the fact that I know them because one of them worked with me, and the other one I know, well, because he's like me, a political junkie. And so I would lump them in that small group of people who actually have an interest in what's taking place. I think, though, what really defines 2016 so far, at least for the Republicans, is the entertainment value of all of this. I said yesterday, this is truly the Fox News convention. If you look at many of the people who've actually been speaking at this Republican convention, they are familiar faces already from Fox News. And Fox News likely has the largest audience for the Republican convention, bar none. I mean, it will eat everybody else's lunch by the end of this week when it comes to the ratings. And you have Donald Trump, who has been a mix his entire adult life of entertainment and business and knows that the entertainment part of it is good for his marketing. And that's how he looks at it. So it's been a fascinating couple of days to tune in and see some of this coverage. But because of the entertainment aspect of it, I have a feeling that Trump's acceptance speech will end up being one of the highest rated events in cable history. Now, when the network TV, when they started covering conventions back in about 1952, it was mainly just David Brinkley sitting in a large room and there was a long camera shot of the podium. And Brinkley got away with this because he had read everything he could get his hands on about the candidates and the conventions, and he did a stellar job because of that. Today, these conventions are just generally scripted, although the Republicans this year have gone off script considerably, which again makes it even, I think, more entertaining. And for all the criticism from the party regulars about that, again, going off script and making it entertaining, from a Trump perspective, it makes Trump, I mean, he's looking at it saying, this is what I want. It brings more attention to what we happen to be doing. 11 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Byron York, who you may also know from Fox News. Byron York is a columnist at the Washington Examiner, As I said, it's the Fox News convention. Byron York was writing today in his column that there's one serious problem for Trump at this convention, and that is John Kasich is not participating. Kasich is the Republican governor of Ohio. There's no love lost between the two men. A few blocks away from the convention hall is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In fact, if you're watching Fox and Friends mornings and they're standing outside on one of the balconies, you can see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the background a few blocks away. So the governor of Ohio, while he is based in the state capital, he does make trips to Cleveland frequently because it's the state's biggest city. And this is Kasich at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And he never spoke about Donald Trump. In fact, he ended up speaking only about his own. It's John Kasich speaking about his own favorite person.
The campaign profoundly changed me. You see, when we started the campaign, it was about balancing budgets. It was about economic growth. It was about rebuilding America. But it became about something deeper than that.
Okay. According to Byron York, unless these two men bury the hatchet, then Donald Trump will not win Ohio. And if Donald Trump doesn't win Ohio, no Republican apparently has ever won the White House losing Ohio. And he'd like to remind people that Trump needs to do a lot of fence mending here. But whenever I listen to John Kasich, he has a disease that I think is common with a great many politicians. And I think we all recognize this to some degree. They have a Messiah complex. I want you to listen to Kasich again very carefully and see if you get a feel for that as well.
The campaign profoundly changed me. You see, when we started the campaign, it was about balancing budgets. It was about economic growth. It was about rebuilding America. But it became about something deeper than that.
Okay. In other words, we've got to love everybody, and I'm trying my best, and I will hug everybody on the... He wants to portray himself, I guess, like George W. Bush did when Bush said, I am a compassionate conservative. And then he came through with a couple of, medical programs that they pushed through Congress and signed into law that we can't afford, simply because they didn't know in the beginning how they were going to pay for them. That's the problem, I think, that Kasich and many of your standard Republicans have, your old country club Republicans who've been around either Washington or their state capitals for a long, long time, and that is they have this complex that somehow they have been sent here by God to deliver us. And Donald Trump got in their way this year, and they're angry as all get out about it. Many, many years ago, I saw a friend actually knock out a sitting U.S. congressman from a primary for U.S. Senate. And he was the best-known Republican in the state. He had been in office, it seemed, forever. And the Republican establishment was infuriated because they couldn't believe that they blamed her instead of blaming the electorate. Or they blamed what they called amateurs in the Tea Party movement. And just the other day, Jeff Flake, who's a U.S. Senator from Arizona, who started out as a, quote, Tea Party candidate, unquote, which he never was. He tried to use that as he was attempting at the time to primary then U.S. Senator, well, still U.S. Senator, and in his own state, John McCain. And then later on, he ended up winning a vacant U.S. Senate seat, and now he is like McCain light. Flake said in a statement that it is his goal to purge the Republican Party of the Trumpistas as well as the Tea Party. That is his goal, to purge the party. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of the Stalinist playbook, to purge the Republican Party. In other words, to get rid of the people who've been upsetting the apple cart so we can go back to same old, same old. And I'm reminded, I brought this up on the air before. I read it in a George Will column way back in the 1990s when George Will said too many people see their public office as their private property, and they just get enraged when somebody challenges the status quo. And they do not want the rabble coming over. You know what they want to do? They pick the candidate, then they come and they say, but we need all of you to vote for that candidate. But if you have a candidate, they refuse to play with you. They take the ball and they go home. You're up next. It's 9:16. You're on KLIX.
Yeah, good morning. Unless I heard wrong, I could have sworn they had all 17 candidates up on the stage, that they all pledged to back whoever the candidate might be. It sounds to me like Kasich. He goes, yeah, as long as I'm the one that wins.
And the
Thank you.
same with Jeb Bush. I mean, Jeb Bush, Kasich, you got a number of them. Of course, Jim Gilmore, who he made that pledge too as well in the beginning. Former governor of Virginia. I suppose he might be backing Trump. You know, it's gotten so bad for Jim Gilmore that media hasn't even come and asked him that. Jim who? They're even asking that over at the newspaper and network news offices. Jim who? Oh yeah, right. He was there months ago. And nobody seems to care about George Pataki, whether he backed Trump or not. I didn't see Pataki in the New York delegation last night when they put Trump over the top. But you're right. It shows you. They extracted a pledge from Donald Trump that Donald Trump would support whoever the nominee happened to be, and now they're reneging on that promise. And I just find it to be it, their lack of control. These are the people who trade their votes for favors to the highest donor. We learned something valuable, though, this year because Hillary Clinton has pledged she is going to try to wipe out the Citizens United decision through constitutional amendment. Now, between us, I think that that's a dangerous road to go down. But Citizens United, for all of the big money that's floating around in politics this year, it didn't have any serious influence. Jeb Bush had stacked up more than $100 million. He lost. He lost badly. Kasich had a significant war chest. He lost and lost badly. Rubio had a significant war chest and lost badly. Hillary had a massive war chest and nearly got upended by the socialist Bernie Sanders. And if Sanders had actually gotten serious about his candidacy earlier, a couple of months sooner, many of the Washington Beltway insiders believe that he would have defeated Clinton on a shoestring budget. So all of this talk about money corrupting politics, it hasn't happened. So for all of the old boys in the network who believe we have to get rid of the Tea Party and Trump, there should be a lesson here. While you're doing the bidding of the donor class and sucking up to all of those wealthy guys and making sure you pass the bills they want you to pass, Pacific Trade, and Export-Import Bank, and anything that will enrich the big donor class, you're going to lose. The public isn't buying it any longer. And in fact, it's not the money that counts on election day or primary day, it's the votes. Stack up all the cash you will. But when it comes right down to it, it's that lever when I flip it and how many people flip that lever with me and go that direction that determine the outcome. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We got plenty more coming up, including a spat between a guy who refers to himself as, well, actually is Bill Nye, the science guy, and some folks who are building a replica of the Ark in Kentucky. More details coming up in just a few minutes on news. They call it the theory of evolution, by the way, and not the fact of evolution. There's a reason for that. More on the way at 9:20. Call it 70 outside. Just wanted to note that we had expected, it's on my schedule. We do every other Wednesday. We have a guest come in from City Hall, whether they be a department head or a member of the council. And frankly, I'm beginning to, somebody canceled 2 weeks ago because of vacation plans. Well, that probably may be true. It was early July. But I'm starting to believe that we're not seeing people show up. And I did not get an email response today about who was going to be here and what the topic was. And I likely would believe it's because we're not kissing their asses over there when it comes to this refugee resettlement issue. Now, I have not condemned them on this matter. I have said I don't believe there was any conspiracy going on. But I think that probably what happens a lot in small towns is you've got the political class that believes that the media is there to promote their causes and that we should just be an extension of what they believe civic duty is, what they believe civic duty is. And I'm starting to think that they feel, well, we'll punish him by not showing up. Yeah, so we could sit here and, well, over at the new city hall, we poured some concrete and ran a couple of pipes, and very, very pretty to look at, and it's going to be very, very pretty when it's all done. And won't it be great? A lot of wonderful things being done in this city, and overall, I think that this council does a wonderful job. But they've really botched the public reaction on this matter when it comes to the public reaction to a recent event here in June of this year. And while they may not necessarily be getting treated fairly by some of those angry people, You got to learn to take the heat. That's when you're in politics. It's not all going to be peaches and cream. And I think we're dealing with a great deal of that on the radio. They've just decided they're going to shut out people who are not going to be, how shall we put it, extensions of their political thinking. 926, Bill Colley with you. Oh, gosh, it just breaks my heart. 926, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I got to be honest with you. A lot of these local folks in politics and government, they make me cringe because I think when they come in here and they start talking or whatever topic it is, that people are changing the channels. I can almost hear those dials being flipped uh, in record numbers all at once. It's a great big, as Ross Perot would have said to paraphrase him, a great big clicking sound. By the way, speaking of this very issue, there are some events coming up in August. And if you've got concerns about it, and I'm not necessarily endorsing any of this, but I am curious and I would like to go see these events because I think curious people would do that, including people in government, unless, of course, you'd like to continue to bury your head in the sand and call all of your opponents bigots. Pamela Geller is scheduled to come to Twin Falls. If you don't know who she is, remember the Draw Muhammad contest in Dallas, where a couple of your jihadist yahoos showed up and decided they were going to shoot it up, but instead the police shot them dead? Well, she was behind that. She is coming here, and she has been a bulldog on these issues ever since 9/11. She was a columnist for many, many years at a New York newspaper, and after 9/11, she decided no more. This is a threat. This is an existential threat to our culture and our country, and she has been a bulldog fighting Islam ever since then. She is scheduled to be in Twin Falls on August 3rd. Now, this is all tentative. Some of these times and dates may change. Tentatively, she is going to be leading a rally at the courthouse downtown on Shoshone Street from noon until 2 on August 3rd. And then she is doing 2 evening events. One, they are inviting local politicians to come to, and you know they won't because the newspaper will make fun of me if I go there, and if the newspaper makes fun of me, I won't get reelected because everybody reads the newspaper after all. Yeah, right. So she's doing 2 events that night. We'll have more details as this gets fleshed out in the next few days. One will be for the political class. If they are so inclined to try and hear all views, they would go. I am sure most of them won't. And then she is doing a second event that very same evening from 6 until 8 o'clock. We'll have more details on location and the like as all this gets firmed up in the next couple of weeks. A public event. And she will share with you her findings over the years and why she has these fears and what you should know as well. And if you're giving your community away to these people, you might want to have a little bit more detail about all of this and what could potentially go wrong. Also, Ann Corcoran is scheduled to come to town. Ann Corcoran has been a leader in this movement now for quite some time. Some of you may be familiar with some of her videos that you'll see online. She's behind the organization Refugee Watch. She's from Minnesota. She got interested when this started happening in her small town, when they started dumping refugees there by the hundreds. And the videos that she does are incredible. You can go to YouTube and search Ann Corcoran. You will find those. And then thirdly, Brigitte Gabriel, who's been on my program before, she was up in the Caldwell area last year. She's coming to Twin Falls for a program on August 4th. And she will likely be joining us on air before that. In fact, we may have an opportunity to get all of these people in the studio. If nothing else, even if you don't agree with them, they are definitely newsmakers. And this is a hot topic, one that isn't going away in this community. So what I'd like to do is just, tell you right now, I'll have more details in the next couple of weeks, the whys, the wheres, the whens on all of this. We have to be a little bit discreet about where they're going to be and sometimes the times on some of these events, simply because if you've got Muslims like they did in Dallas who traveled 1,000 miles to try and kill Pamela Geller, then you can understand why they're a little bit antsy about all of this. And if people are trying to kill you just because they don't like what you're saying, then perhaps what you're saying is worthwhile. And people should be listening, even if you don't agree. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. We've got more coming up in just a few minutes on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. Bill Nye, the science guy, attacking Christians. Who knew? That's coming up.